So here's our basic agenda. We'll have a short explanation of the Tech Academy, and then we'll do our workshop all about the game industry as a developer and how to break into it. And then we'll have a Q&A session, although we will watch for questions while we're doing the workshop. Then we'll give you some information about our boot camps. We'll have a free gift for you at the end, so please stick around. We love giving away free gifts. It's fun. Whole class should take about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. So who are we? Well, the Tech Academy is a technology training company. We help people get into tech, and we do that with boot camps. If you're not already familiar with boot camps, most people are, but they are relatively new. They've only been around for about 11 years, right? 12 years. Boot camps are intensive technology certification programs, and they're designed to prepare people for entry-level positions in tech really rapidly. They typically last anywhere from 3 to 6 months, some are longer, and they focus on practical modern skills, the kind of things that employers are looking for right now to help you break into the industry really quickly. The only other two ways to break into the tech industry are college or universities or being self-taught. So the coding boot camps fit a really valuable niche or area in the tech industry. We've been offering thorough, budget-friendly, flexible, and trusted coding boot camps for over a decade. We were actually one of the first boot camps around. They'd only been around for about 6 or 7 months when I first got the idea and laid out how this Tech Academy thing would work. Our programs are cost effective. They're self-paced, which is really cool. They're fully online, and we tailor them for beginners, people that have no prior technology or coding experience. They cover a lot of different in-demand skills for the tech industry. They're endorsed by stellar online reviews, and we designed them to fit around your personal schedule. And we prepare you for your technology career with a really well-rounded toolkit. In America, the average price for boot camps is around $13,500, and ours are under the national average. In fact, we have boot camps that start at as low as $5,300. And I just want to, finish up by reading our mission statement. It's why we're here. It's why we do these classes. It's why we help train people. The mission statement of the Tech Academy is to graduate entry-level technology professionals that excel in the basics of their field, and thereafter have successful careers in the tech industry, and whose actions raise industry standards and surpass client expectations. Our product is you working in tech. A new service we've launched about a month ago to help people who are in tech or breaking in to accelerate their careers is our the Tech Academy Accelerator. It's a new monthly subscription program. It includes live weekly workshops with me. It gives you access to over 100 educational videos and access to over 100 self-paced online mini classes in a variety of more advanced technology subjects. And speaking of advanced, the live weekly workshops with me, we do a deep dive into complex technical subjects. There's Q&A back and forth throughout the whole thing because we have open chat and voice in those workshops. And we teach topics that are suggested by the community. There's a whole community behind it, and we're regularly in communication to find out what they want to learn about, and we do a deep dive into it. I love it because I get to get my hands dirty with really advanced, nerdy technology stuff, and people learn in the process. It's really inexpensive. It's $9.99 a month. You can do a trial of it for 7 days for free. Regina, if you can drop a link in chat, there you go. If you want to apply for that, you can try it out for a week. You'll put in some credit card data, but they don't charge you. We set up the technology on the back end ourselves. We know it works. But you register for it, come to the first workshop next week, check out some of the videos on there. And if you want to stay, stay. We'd love to have you. So I'll give a minute. I want to grab a sip of water if anybody wants to click on there and check out the accelerator. That'd be awesome. All right, so let's talk about what this class is and isn't. First of all, we try really hard to explain technology-related concepts in plain English, to give you simple definitions for technical terms. We'll do that all the way throughout, right? I do want to stress that this particular class doesn't have any coding in it. We do give regular free classes that teach you the basics of coding. They're a lot of fun. We have one 2 days from now, actually. Regina, if you could find the link for the next coding class. I think we're going to be building a hangman game in that one, which is kind of fun to put together. And on it, you'll learn the fundamentals of coding. in one night. You'll actually, like, the stuff we go over is really vital if you want to learn to code. And the basics can actually be imparted pretty quickly. It's kind of neat. So I'll give a minute if anybody wants to click on that link to the next event and sign up. I'd love to see you there Friday. Fun, especially if it's the very first time someone ever wrote their first computer program. It's a blast to be in charge of the computer, making it do what you want it to do instead of having to be, the effect of someone else's computer program. All right. So let's talk about the game industry. I want to just preface everything we're about to say with this cold, hard fact. Working at a game studio is one of the toughest industries to break into. Not just in technology, just in business. Working at a game studio, it's tough to break into. And that's because of three primary barriers to getting into the video game industry. The first one is if someone has inadequate modern skills. It is an industry that is relatively quick to advance in certain areas because there's so much money in it and so much demand from the user base for newer, better, faster. There's a lot of technology development in it. And so you need to have modern skills to be valuable, especially at the bigger studios. The other big barrier to breaking in is just plain lack of experience. Most game studios move at a breakneck pace. And if you're a gamer, you know what I'm talking about. They'll typically announce a launch date for a game, and you know that internally the developers are pushing back and saying, there's no way we can be ready by then. And the marketing and sales folks are saying, we don't care. This is when we're going to launch. And so in that kind of an environment, at least with the big studios, if you're walking in the door with a lack of experience, you're probably not going to be that appealing. Now, there's solutions to all of this. I'm not trying to paint a super negative picture. I just want to rip off the Band-Aid right at the beginning, right? The third barrier to entering the industry is it's a very competitive environment. It's probably not a surprise to you if you signed up for this class. A lot of people want to get into game development, especially passionate gamers. It'd be a lot of fun to be on the creation end of that instead of the consumer end of it, right? So I just want to stress again, it's not easy. Tonight, we'll cover how to overcome these barriers. And we help people overcome the barriers and actually break into the industry all the time. So we do know a bit about what we're talking about here. But I just want to let you know right up front what to expect if you go into this. The rewards are awesome, not just monetarily, but most people that go into this part of the technology industry are very passion-driven about it. And so if you can manage to break into it and help to create the kinds of games that you love, it's incredibly personally gratifying to do so. And so we'll show you how to overcome some of these barriers. So let's talk about the Unreal Engine. First, I want to explain what an engine is. The actual term is a game engine. Do me a favor, drop in chat if you've ever heard the term game engine. Give me a 1. Drop a 1 in chat if you've ever heard the term game engine. It's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Bunch of ones. Excellent. So all a game engine is a specialized piece of software. It's just a computer program, right? But it's very specialized. It is a computer program that you use to make other computer programs. Now, you'll find that a lot in technology. We as technologists like to develop our own tools to make our jobs easier. And easier means a few different things. Sometimes it means that you can do your job faster. Sometimes it means that the type of work you're doing in technology is so specialized that the existing tools just have a lot of friction to get them to do what you want. And I say this because there are a lot of different computer programs out there that can be used to make computer programs. The most common one is a thing called an integrated development environment. Integrated development environment. or IDE. Sounds all fancy. It's just like I said, it's a computer program that helps you make computer programs. And it's used to build most kind of computer software, big websites, computer programs that help you, in big businesses like maintain inventory, keep track of sales, run accounting, all these kinds of things. You would use an integrated development environment for that. But when it comes to games, the needs of the program, the developer, are substantially different when they're doing their job of making a video game. And so, beginning about 12, 13 years ago, people started to create specialized computer programs to help game developers do their job better and faster. That's all a game engine is. Now, specifically, the engine is the core program that runs the game. And it is also at the same time this specialized tool to make the games. So you've got two sides of the same thing here. You have a specialized tool that you're going to use to help make computer programs. And then included in that is the portion of your program that you're going to give to somebody. When you give someone a video game to play, inside it is this specialized program called an engine. Its job changes at that point, and its job is to form the core of your video game. So as you can imagine, with this specialized type of computer program called the game engine, you need specialized skills. Well, what we're talking about right now is one of the two most popular game engines. It's called the Unreal Engine. And here's how it's used. We'll get into a little bit more detail on this in a moment. But essentially, when you're using it to make a game, it has two different sides, two different things you can use. One is actually almost a drag and drop experience of creating the different objects that might be in your game, either stationary objects or player characters, things that actually have agency or can, be interacted with or interact with the player. And they're drag and drop. It makes it a real nice visual interface. And you can do a fair bit in terms of creating a relatively complex game just with a visual interface to design a game asset and define how it's going to behave and then drop it into the environment that is your game. You can do a lot with it. But if you want to have really complex gameplay, if any of you are video game players, there's some games out there that are pretty complex. There's a limitation of that, graphic representation of the things in your game. And for that, you need to switch over to the other way that you can use Unreal Engine. And that is, you can write your own custom programs to highly customize how all the things in your game work. What does this mean? It means that to truly utilize the Unreal Engine, you need to have a sense not just of the graphical way to compose a game and the different assets in it and how they're all going to interact with each other, but you also need to be a computer programmer if you really want to leverage this Unreal Engine to create truly powerful, complex games. So this is Unreal Engine. It's arguably the most used game engine in the world. And what I mean by that is lots and lots of the games that you either have played or are quite familiar with were built on this Unreal Engine. You can see them here. Fortnite. I think they've made approximately 400 quadrillion trillion billion dollars, right? Might be a little off on the number there. Days Gone, Batman Arkham Knight, Mortal Kombat, right? These were all built on this Unreal Engine. So you can see it can create extremely complex and powerful games. There's many, many more games that were built using the Unreal Engine. Gears of War 4, Street Fighter 5, Kingdom Hearts 3, BioShock Infinite, Borderlands 3, super popular, Mass Effect Andromeda, Tekken 7, one of the coolest games in history, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, and I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. Final Fantasy VII, the remake, was built on the Unreal Engine. So if you have the skills to work inside the Unreal Engine, well, you can see it's really, really, really popular. Lots of game studios use it. So I mentioned this other side of things beyond the graphical way to kind of make your game and its canvas, the playing field, the assets in it. There's the aspect of being able to customize all that really highly by programming, which is where this programming language C++ comes in. Now, it's kind of interesting. C++ as a language has been around since about early 90s, late 80s. It's been around for a long time. And not all computer programming languages really survive. There's thousands of computer programming languages. Every few months, a brand new one kind of gets announced that's supposed to be super awesome for this or that kind of software programming. So for something to survive for 30, 40 years, it's got to be a really good language. And C++ is really good. Now, that said, it's kind of a challenging language to learn. But clearly, it's worth it because it is what you use to customize your games inside of Unreal Engine. And I just want to stress this. If you really want to get the most out of Unreal Engine, you've got to be able to program. And specifically, you have to be able to program in C++, or you're relatively limited in the complexity of the games that you build and how much you can get your vision of what you have in mind for that game to actually come out in reality. To do the really cool stuff, you got to be able to program. So that's Unreal Engine and C++. And again, the Unreal Engine is probably, I have to look up current stats, but the most popular of the game engines in the world. Let's look at number 2. And it's only number 2 by a real small amount. This is the Unity game engine. Now, honestly, everything I just said about Unreal Engine, I can say about Unity. It has the same sort of experience where it has the two-sided elements to making your game. It's got the graphical user interface to define all your game assets and what the behavior is and where they are on the canvas that is your playing field, right? And it has, right alongside it, the ability to use computer programming to add a high degree of customization to the logic inside of your computer program, right? You think, for example, about some of these role-playing games where you have not just a huge amount of assets any one individual character can have, but you can compose different parties of characters, right? And a lot of the gameplay involves really complex logic of finding different assets out in the game world. And when you combine multiple assets in different ways, it produces more complex effects. All of that kind of logic has to be built with computer programs. That's not something that the other side of Unity or the other side of the Unreal Engine, the graphic interface, it's not going to be able to accommodate that really well. So you have to be able to think with, what is a computer program? How do I build this logic using this language? So again, Unity is the second most used game engine. Some of the example games made with Unity are Ori and the Blind Forest, Monument Valley 2. Man, Monument Valley is just fantastic. Gorgeous, gorgeous interface as well. Hollow Knight, little thing called Pokemon Go. You and every single person who could walk in the world heard about that in what, 2016, 2017? It's so wild, right? But there's many, many, many more. Cities, Skylines, Hearthstone, huge. Kerbal Space Program, Escape from Tarkov, Shadowgun Legends. These were all made using Unity. So I wanted to define a term that maybe some of you already know. There's this, it isn't an official term, but it really does have some meaning in the game industry. It's called a AAA game. A very loose definition would be a major video game that costs more than $100 million to develop. And by the way, if you're not that familiar with the game industry, that might come to you as a rather shockingly large amount of money. $100 million is, by any standard, a lot of money. But some of these games make $1 or $2 billion in gross revenues. So I don't know about you, but spending $100 million to have potential earnings of 1 or 2 or 3 billion probably seems like a pretty smart idea. And overall, we know that the major game industry, major game studios, they can do this. They do in fact earn. Now, some of their games go bust and they don't make their money back, but the real big ones get huge. I don't even know how much money Pokemon Go made. I think they all the money. They made all the money, all the money. And then Fortnite came along and made all the money again. So here's why I'm stressing this is by learning Unity and Unreal, if you have both of those in your toolkit, you now know the game engines behind the majority of the AAA games. There aren't that many super successful AAA games over the last 5 or 10 years that were not made with either Unity or Unreal Engine. It's really where it's at when it comes to making games. Now, there are other smaller boutique tools you can use to make games. And at the end of the day, if you have the tool that fits what you're doing and you're managed to make a game and you're happy with it and it achieves whatever you define success as, more power to you. But if you're trying to break into the industry, it's smart to go with where the majority of the jobs is going to be, because the majority of the studios use those tools. And that's where it is Unity and Unreal Engine. Also, as an aside, if you've learned to develop games with those two engines, any other technology you find to build games, even if, like I said, smaller boutique computer programs that you can develop games with, you're going to understand all the same concepts as well. Those skills will translate. But if you're trying to break in, give yourself the best possibility by learning what's super popular. So we talk about this this game engine, right, of Unity, and we mentioned that you want to customize it. Well, what language do we use? We know that for Unreal Engine, we use C++ to add that customization, that high degree of logic that only a computer programming language will let us implement. Over in this side of things, in the Unity world, we use C#. Now, this is arguably my favorite language. It was developed by Microsoft about 23 years ago, 24 years ago, and it was designed as part of their initiative to do what's called rapid application development. At the time, back in the late 90s, creating software, especially for the Windows platform, because that was really who was king back then. Mac OS really wasn't that popular back in the late 90s. Linux was just a tool for fringe weirdos in the technology industry, right? Windows was at that point where it was at for a lot of computer software jobs, right? It was not a fun experience. There was like 20 different technologies involved, and each one of them had its own weird like kinks, and fitting them all together was a giant nightmare, right? So they developed C#. And I've been there every step of the way as they've developed C# and matured it. They got version 12 of it out now, right? It's a phenomenal programming language and a little bit easier to learn than C++, in my opinion. So C# is, in fact, the computer programming language you'll use to customize your games if you're building them with Unity. So like I said, it is to Unity what C++, that language, is to the Unreal Game Engine. And again, in order to really effectively make use of the Unity game engine, you've got to know C#. You've got to be able to write that programming, or you're going to be quite limited in your bag of tricks in making truly complex games. Take a sip of water. Okay, so I want to watch chat here for a second. Nicole says, ugh, C++. I have tried to learn it. I feel you, Nicole. I know. Not a lot of fun. All right, so I'm going to ask you a question. Pay close attention here. In the chat, if you've done any programming with C++, give me a 1. Any programming with C#, give me a 2. And if you've never used them, give me a 3. A lot of 2s, a lot of C#. Some 3s. Show both C# and C++. That's excellent. Okay, good. Yeah. And by the way, that is what we see most of the time when we start talking about game development. Is a lot more people have actually used C# than they have C++. And part of it is this: C# really did accomplish its goals. It made it much easier to do software development, at least in the Windows arena. And so it's become quite popular. C++, on the other hand, until the game industry exploded, C++ was really almost like like almost like a legacy language. Like it wasn't really respected a lot. It was used in certain really old computer programs where that's how they were built back when they first came around. And so to maintain those programs, you had to learn C++. There's a few niche areas of technology where people were using C++, and for the most part, though, it really wasn't doing a lot. And then, as we all know, the game industry has kind of exploded over the last 15 to 20 years. And with the the popularity of Unreal Engine, C++ has a resurgence in popularity driven by the game industry, which is kind of cool, actually. So now let's talk about the top gaming studios. If you're a gamer, I'm sure you've heard of most, if not all of these. Naughty Dog, Rockstar, a little company called Nintendo. They're called Nintendo Entertainment Planning and Development. Insomniac, and of course, Valve. I mean, I don't know, actually, anybody under the age of 35 who doesn't know most of these companies already, right? So it's really hard to get hired at these companies. I could probably say that 10 more times. You would all get very annoyed with me, but it wouldn't change the truth. It's very hard to get hired at these companies. In the same way that it's hard to get hired at Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, or Google. It's very hard. They are the undisputed kings of the gaming industry. They can afford to hire the best talent. It's just the way it is. But there's a lot of people making games that aren't on this slide. If you want to get into these big games, they typically require that you have done work already at a smaller studio. Obviously, they want to know that you've actually been in the trenches, been part of a team that pulled off a game. And once in a while, they'll hire a solo developer who has a one-man or one-woman game studio. But they just want you to have had experience already with the full cycle of, the idea of the game, designing it, building it, testing it, deploying it, patching it, doing downloadable content, upgrading it, whatever, right? And if you have that at a smaller studio, now they'll look at you. But quite frankly, unless you're some super ultra rock star ninja coder, you're not going to walk in the door with this being where you work at your first job. So again, I'm not a very negative person. I've seen pretty amazing things. I saw a guy at one of our boot camps who wasn't even done with the boot camp and got a job at Disney for $154,000 a year. Like, wild things can happen, but they are outside of the norm. And so I won't let you know what to expect. So how do you break into video game development? Well, first, let's talk about the technology part of it, okay? Oddly enough, even though you're going to be making video games, the place you start is with website development. There are 3 different technologies that are used in web development that actually are used in virtually all software development nowadays. And those are HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language, CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and a programming language called JavaScript. Most of you have probably heard of those terms before. Briefly, HTML is the language that you write web pages in. It defines what the content is going to be on the page, whether it's text or images or videos or whatever. And it defines, where they're placed and some of the visual appearance of that content. That's what HTML is, Hypertext Markup Language. By the way, hypertext just means some text on the web page that if you click on it, it takes you somewhere else. Hyper meaning above or beyond, and text meaning text. Now, it doesn't have to be text. It can be an image or a video. We've all experienced that. There's something on a web page, you click on it, and suddenly you're taken somewhere else. That's all hyper means. Markup means defining how the appearance of content is going to be rather than defining the content itself. So, for example, you could have the word, brontosaurus. That's content. The markup associated with that might say brontosaurus should be italicized, or brontosaurus should link to another page at allaboutbrontosauruses.com. Brontosauri? I don't know. So that's hypertext markup language. The content on your page, any links to other pages, that's all HTML. CSS, like I said, it stands for cascading style sheets. And a style sheet is just a little teeny document that has a bunch of rules about how to change the appearance of everything on web pages, what colors to use in different elements on given pages, whether or not there's going to be borders around images, what kind of controls there might be on a video player, all this stuff. You can define rules about this, but what's really cool is, this is where the cascading part of cascading style sheets comes in. You can put all these rules in one little document, but you can make those rules affect every page on your website. And that way, if you want to come along later and change something about how your whole website looks or behaves, you can make one change in one document and it changes every single page on your website, for example. It cascades out from that file into different sections of your website or the whole website. That's a pretty cool technology. And then, of course, there's JavaScript. I don't think there's that many people that haven't heard of JavaScript. It's a really popular computer programming language. And it is the language developed purely for the web, actually, right? That allows web pages to have interactivity. Like if you roll over something with your mouse, JavaScript is what might make it change behavior. Like it might expand a little bit and get bigger, or it might, bounce or whatever, right? A calendar that appears on the screen that has an actual like up-to-date calendar instead of just being an image. This is all done with JavaScript. So those are these three website development languages or technologies. Why do we care about this with games? The fact is, the interface in a lot of games is actually a web page. And so these technologies get used a lot in defining the actual interface that the user interacts with, right? Thanks, Leo. So that's the first thing under how to break into video game development. Second thing, you're going to need to learn how to code in both C# and C++. Why? Because again, if you truly want to be able to use the Unreal game engine and the Unity game engine to their maximum effectiveness, you've got to be able to program in those two languages. It doesn't mean you need to be a programmer capable of using those to make big, giant business applications. That's not where you're headed. But you need to know those languages well to apply them to computer programming. So that's the next step. Learn to code in those languages. Only then would you jump into learning how to use the Unity game engine and the Unreal game engine. And I want to pause for a second, first of all, for a sip of water. And also to make a point here. If you were to go out right now and just start trying to learn to use Unity or the Unreal engine, and you hadn't become thoroughly versed in those website technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and the appropriate language, C# or C++, if you just jumped into, let me download Unity or Unreal Engine and just get started making a game, you would have a very hard go of it because you're trying to learn several things all at once. And this is we all know this. Learn things on the right gradient. Build those foundations with the web technologies. Add in knowing the two languages, C# and C++, and then learn to use Unity and Unreal. Once you've learned those things, now you need to get practical with it. You need to start building an online portfolio with games. Doesn't matter. This is another really important thing. They don't need to be big, giant games. That's actually less important. What's important is smaller games that are a full, complete product. It can be a very simple game. But if you've managed to create an actual game that has any degree of interestingness to it, and it's complete, and it's out in your portfolio, and someone can access it and play it, huge kudos. It's a tremendously valuable thing to have in your portfolio. You don't need to make the next Final Fantasy game that has 80 to 150 hours of gameplay. Not needed at all. It can be a nice little slow play game, but finish it and put it in your portfolio. Once you've done that, now you need to gain experience in one of, in actually building production games for sale or freemium or however they're distributed, right? There's two ways. You can just get a job at a smaller game studio or a game startup just to start, right? The kind of places that they're honestly, they can't compete with the big, studios that put AAA games, and they're willing to take on entry-level developers. Or you can go delayed gratification and go work as a software developer for 1 or 2 years. Actually do the development work outside of games and the Unreal Engine and and Unity, and just build software at a company. All of the skills you will learn in those 1 or 2 years, every single one of them will translate when you finally move into just being a dedicated game developer. Guarantee you, software is software is software. Yes, it's a different medium, and yes, there's these specialized tools like Unreal Game Engine and Unity. But at the end of the day, it's still just a computer program. And the business of taking a program from idea to design, to build, to test, to deploy, and then maintain, doing that 3, 4, 5, 6 times while you've got this software developer job is super, super valuable experience. And like I said, translates directly over to getting that first job in a game studio. And this is the reason I stress this is something that I'm going to tell you about it in a minute, but we have a phenomenal boot camp on game development. So we've gotten a lot of people into the industry, right? And all too often we see people come in that when they get done with the boot camp and they're in our job placement portion of the program, they're only willing to take a game developer job. And I get it. I understand it. I mentioned earlier that like people want to move into this industry. They're usually very passionate about it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the fact is, like I said, unless you're some rock star ninja developer, you're not going to walk in one of these game jobs right off the bat, especially with the bigger places. And building software is fun. In a certain respect, it almost doesn't matter what piece of software you build for what industry. Being able to come up with an idea that either you or a team kind of came up with and work together collaboratively to design it and then to build it and then figure out all the ways to test it and then get it actually deployed out in the end user's hands. Like, oh my word, they're using a piece of software we built. And then you have to maintain it and handle bugs and handle, adding new features. It's fun. Yes, it's not in the game industry, but it's a blast. And again, all those skills transfer over. So again, just review this. How to break in. Learn website development. Learn to code in C# and C++. Learn how to use Unity and the Unreal Engine. Build an online portfolio with games in it. They don't need to be super complex. And then gain some experience making actual games in one of 2 ways. Either work at a smaller game studio or a game startup to start, or work as a software developer for 1 or 2 years and then move into a game studio. So that's the route. Now, I've mentioned it already, but we do know a lot about this. We have a game developer bootcamp. It's actually one of our longer boot camps because you may have noticed there's a fair bit you need to know. It's a 22-week game developer bootcamp. And on it, you'll learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, all those web technologies. You'll learn C++ and C#. You'll learn Unity and the Unreal Engine. And this is the part that's super cool. You have 4 weeks of live projects using those game engines. You work on actual games that you can put in your portfolio as part of a team. What we do in our live projects, by the way, I just got to talk about this for a second, because when we had this idea 10 years ago, we knew if we could pull it off, it'd be a huge benefit to our students. We wanted to, from the very beginning, try to replicate what is the actual working environment like. People are going to learn in an academic environment with a bunch of this knowledge. But at the end of the day, what matters is how do you actually do technology work on a day-to-day basis? How do you collaborate as part of a team in figuring out what are the priority tasks to be done? How do we assign who does which tasks? How do we coordinate back and forth as we each do our work? How do you submit your work for approval and make sure it meets the needs of the project? How do you merge your work into the overall project? How do you deploy that computer program out to those end users and get feedback from them? Like, how do you do that day in, day out? And so that's what our live projects are, is real software with real tasks that need to be done, run in the same way as real industry projects are done, with the same meetings, the same coordination, the same assignments of tasks, the same permissions needed to actually get your work approved and put into the actual main computer program. And when people go through that live project and they actually experience what it's like to be part of a development team, that's when it all comes together and they realize, wow, I can actually do this. And their confidence goes through the roof. All of our boot camps have a live project. I just want to stress that only a few of them have 4 full weeks of live projects, because we want you to have a live project with C++, and the Unreal Engine, and with Unity and C#. Once you have experience with both, it makes you that much more appealing out in the job market to have them both under you. Right? So the ultimate answer to how to break into game development, shameless plug, is to do our boot camp. It covers all the bases, and it's successfully broken people into the industry. Now, I was watching, oh good, yeah, there's some questions in here, okay? Let me grab a sip of water real quick. Any tips for folks looking into getting, any tips for folks looking to get into game writing? Now, this is a whole separate area. Now, I'll tell you what, this is one of the things I like the question. Thank you very much, Emily. One of the things I actually really love about the game industry is you can wear your creative flag high, hold your creative flag high in this industry. Not that you can't when you're making computer programs intended for business applications, but they are business applications. There's not a lot of art to it. Yes, there's user experience and user design, and those are vital aspects of making any software. But when it comes to games, I'll answer that question in a second, Axel. That's a good question. When it comes to games, there's a story there. The best games have story. So tips for people looking to get into game writing. Here's the biggest one. Even if it's not in the medium of games, write all the time and make it public. Write in public. Have your blog. Have, a membership on Medium. Wherever it is that you choose, wherever you choose to publish, just publish writing and do not stop. Whether it's for free, if there's a book you want to write, then write each chapter in public, right? So that's one of the biggest things, is make your writing public. It doesn't matter how good it is. Every creator struggles with this. One of the best books you can read on that, by the way, is The War of Art. I want to make sure I get the name exactly right. It's such a good book. The War, I've got it in my Kindle. Art. Yeah, Stephen Pressfield. Okay. It's called The War of Art. You can go to Amazon right now and get it. The War of Art. Break through the blocks and win your inner creative battles. I can't recommend this book enough. It's fantastic. So that isn't game centric. Okay. Now with the game centric part of it, one of the best things you can do is find the, out on Reddit and other gamer, places where gamers collect, find someone who is doing an indie game project. Here's what happens most of the time is the solo game developer is hard at work on the technology part of it, getting comfortable with whatever game engine they're using, Unity or Unreal, or maybe it's some smaller program, right? And they're building the game mechanics. When it comes to story, not all technologists are really good at effective communication and storytelling. So volunteer to help on one of those, just to get that's your way to have your portfolio, right? Now, you have to judge who you're going to work with really well. And the most important thing is, does it seem like this person or this small team regardless of the quality of the product they're going to ship, is it real to you that they're going to ship something? Is your work ever going to see the light of day? Because the only time you'd ever want to work for free, quote unquote, is if you're receiving something super valuable in return. And if it's not money, it better be something out in public that you can point people to, that they can look at and you can go, yeah, I wrote the story behind that. You can have off in your portfolio specific screenshots of different story beats that you wrote, but the actual working game deployed out in a game store somewhere where people can look and go, oh, this is real. It's published, it's real to them. That's how I'd recommend starting to break in. Does that help a little bit? Let's see if I can get my chat back up. Okay, good. Excellent. Yeah, Emily, that was a great question. All right, Axel asks, why web development first? So it's a good question. Here's the thing about web development. And this actually speaks to like the entire educational approach we take at the school. In technology, this is true of any complex subject, okay? In technology, though, in computer technology, there are certain core principles that underlie most of the tools we use all the time. We've got full presentations on the core principles down inside the machine, inside the individual computer, right? The actual physical equipment inside there, how it works, and how that influences the work you do every day as a programmer. It's not what I'm talking about here, although the principle applies. When it comes to any time two computers or more need to work together to accomplish meaningful work, what's underneath that is web technologies. Every game you'll play uses this technology in one way or another. One of the simplest ones is just how do you get the game. The actual program needs to travel online somewhere to get to you. But even in the gameplay, when you have the user interface, the actual like gameplay environment that you're interacting with, there's constant communication going back and forth between that interface that you, the player, are interacting with and the main computer program behind the scenes. That communication that goes back and forth uses web technologies most of the time. And so if you're trying to build a computer program without knowing how that whole communication system works underneath the hood, i.e. how the web works, you're gonna have a really hard go of it. And so we start with web technologies because they're underneath all that beautiful surface of your game canvas, your environment, the different player, the different elements in the game that have agency. All of those require communication between multiple computers. And so they all use web technologies. Does that answer that question for you, Axel? It's a good question. Absolutely. You're welcome, Emily. Juan asks where to find indie game developers. I would go to Reddit first, right? I would look up indie game developers. Also, if you go to Product Hunt, give me a 1 in chat if you're familiar with Product Hunt. All right. Let me. ProductHunt.com, PRODUCTHUNT, ProductHunt.com. Great place to look for indie developers of all sorts. These usually 1 or 2 man bands who are trying to launch something new into the world. Sometimes it's games, sometimes it's productivity software. A lot of times now it's some sort of artificial intelligence thing, but that's a great place to find indie game developers. So I would look to Reddit and to Product Hunt to start with. All right. Any other questions? All right. So I just showed you a little bit about the game developer bootcamp we have. We have a lot more. By the way, stick around for your free gift. We'll be giving you that in a moment. We actually have 12 coding boot camps. They're all online and they cover a huge range of technology subjects. As you can see, we've got game development. We also have artificial intelligence, which is kind of popular right now. I've been programming computers since 1981 because I'm old. I've never seen anything like this, folks. AI is literally changing everything. It's not hype. It's affecting how business is done. It's affecting every creative industry. It's huge effect. If you want to give yourself a career that is going to have legs, a career that has longevity, get into technology and learn to specialize in AI. You're never going to be without a job. And it's been 43 years I've been in and around this industry. It's a super valuable area to get into. But again, it's everything: computer programming, website development, cybersecurity, design. I talked about user interface and user experience earlier, data science, mobile app development. We cover all of it. In fact, we have more certification programs than any other coding bootcamp on earth. All of these boot camps, this is key, they're self-paced, but they're also instructor supported. You're not just left to your own devices. They're also really flexible. Students set their own study schedule and they can enroll any day, 365 days a year. Our content is really well-rounded and in-depth. It's not a surface skim over any of it. The boot camps are really affordable. Like I said earlier, they're priced under the national average. All of our bootcamp programs include both job placement training and job placement assistance. And most importantly, the programs are designed for absolute beginners. There's no technology knowledge or experience required. You don't have to be a nerd. Yes, I am one. That's probably become very clear as I've spoken tonight. Proud of it. I was made fun of it for a lot when I was a kid, but yeah, I'm a nerd. But you don't have to be a nerd to get through these programs. Most of our students aren't. Most of them probably don't laugh at my stupid jokes that I dropped in the curriculum, and they probably think I'm weird. But they get through the curriculum and they get jobs, so that's okay. We're regularly on every major best coding bootcamp list there is out there. We're really proud of this. These awards are not given lightly. We're familiar with most of the organizations that give them, and they're very picky. And we've been working with them now for 10 years. So when they say we're doing well, we know it means something. But it isn't just them. The student and graduate feedback we get means that our average review rating across all major platforms is 4.8 out of 5 stars, straight from our students and graduates, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to assume that if you signed up for this, you probably got at least some kind of interest in working in tech, but there might be a couple of misconceptions about it. So I just want to point out some things. Like, why would you consider working in tech, in or out of game development? The fact is that for the most part, it's got really good work-life balance. There's a lot of remote work available, right? Technology workers are very well valued at their organizations, which is really, really cool. It also, not just in game development, but it's very true in game development, it's a very creative industry. And you can take a lot of personal pride in your work. And it's a stable industry that pays a lot. It pays well. Tech pays well, right? And if you apply yourself and keep learning, there's regular increases in pay. I know a lot of technologists that make upwards of $350,000 a year. But frankly, even if you're like right in the average like software developer makes about $110,000, $120,000 a year, like that's not bad income. Keep working hard and you make more than that. Pretty cool, right? I'll grab that question in a second, Mitchell. I see that. So there are, though, barriers to doing a boot camp. I'm not going to pretend there aren't. I just described a game developer boot camp that takes 22 weeks. So boot camp tuition is a barrier. It can cost thousands of dollars to do a boot camp. Rightfully so. The rewards are awesome, but it does take the money. We have several different things we try to do about that, right? We have multiple financing options. We have a huge upfront discount. You can just pull the money together and pay upfront, right? We also have monthly payment options if you have no credit or bad credit. We have a tuition option for everyone, whatever financial condition. But here's the thing I want to stress, and probably you are already thinking this way if you attended a class like this. Getting through a Tech Academy bootcamp is truly an investment in yourself. You're arming yourself with skills that are in great demand in modern society, that many people want to break into but haven't figured out a way to do so. And they're skills that have long-term value because the computer industry ain't going anywhere. So it's an investment in yourself. There is the time factor, though. Some boot camps take a while to get through because there's a lot to learn, right? Some boot camp providers out there approach it this way. They'll say, okay, this is going to take a lot of time. So what we're going to make you do is you're all going to go through the training in one big cohort. People will sign up, but they don't start immediately. They pool everyone together in a big group, and then they start all at the same day. And here's the important point. It's actually really critical. Please pay attention to this. Everyone goes through the material at the exact same pace. I don't know about you. I don't learn at the same pace as everybody. There's some things that I'm pretty bright at and I do pretty quickly. And there are honestly some things that I struggle with. And I would like to be afforded the time and attention and care to get me through those really difficult things and then back up and running. So cohort doesn't work for me. And it doesn't work for our school. Also, some schools make you come in person, which obviously limits you in terms of geographics, right? But you got to drive in and go there and then go home, right? All of our boot camps are online. Also, with our programs, you choose your own study schedule and the programs are self-paced. This means part-time studies allowed, and it also means you can study concurrently to holding down a job, or if you're still going to school in some other discipline, which makes them very, very flexible. But here's the last thing. One of the barriers is having at least some technical interest or technical ability. Now, here's a young nerd that could very well have been me as a kid. I totally got that. I want to stress something. And I have my co-founder to thank for this. When we first started the school, I didn't quite grasp how to make the curriculum accessible to as many people as possible. And he helped me with a really vital insight early on. What we knew to be true, and one of the mistakes I made early on, is that some technology education materials are actually they're too hard. They're unnecessarily too hard. And the reason is some educators assume too much prior knowledge on the part of the student. It's a horrible mistake in any education, but especially technology. We've solved that. We've cracked that. You don't have to be a nerd to get through our programs. You don't have to have any tech background at all to enroll. If you're reasonably bright and you can read, write, and do basic math, you can get through the programs. So with all that said, I have a couple questions for you. Are you perhaps working some sort of a dead-end job? And dead-end can mean a few different things. It can mean there's an upper cap on your income. And while you're not there yet, you can see where it is, and it's not high enough for you. Or you truly can't stand your job. You want to change in career. You're tearing your hair out going, this is not what I want to be doing. Or maybe you're even unemployed. Or maybe you really want to work from home and there's no way the job you have now would ever even allow that. Or it might not even be physically possible to do what you do remotely. And look, work-life balance is a real thing. Maybe you want more time with your loved ones. Is it time for a career change for you? And if it is, well, I'm not going to back off of it. The Tech Academy is the solution. We are career change experts. It's what we've done for more than a decade now. This bridge, you can see as part of our logo, that orange bridge, it's there for a reason. We represent the route into technology for everyone. We've worked really hard to make it so any bright person can break into tech from whatever background, whatever experience. And like I said, we've been doing it over a decade from breaking people into tech. Most of our graduates make, on average, $30 an hour in their first job. Yes, some are more and some are less. But on average, $30 an hour, that's $60,000 a year. For a lot of people, that might be what they would make in their career if they'd been in it 5 or 10 years. Oh, wow, now I'm up to 60,000. You can start out that way in tech. And this isn't a small number of people. We have over 1,000 graduates working in tech already. Everywhere, from small businesses all the way up to really big companies like Nike and Facebook and Disney and Uber and Epic Games. We've gotten graduates working at all those places. So as a reminder, we offer open enrollment. So you can actually start anytime. And I do encourage you to enroll now. You'll be very, very happy you did. Here's how you do it. There's a link. We're going to drop it in the chat. You go to learncodinganywhere.com/Erik. It's the Erik link. And it's a super simple form to fill out. And once you do, there's a series of steps you can do to find out more about the school and how our learning programs work. and which boot camp would be the right one for you. There's videos and articles. There's even an optional step in there to book a call with our admissions personnel and talk to people who've helped thousands of people break into tech. So if you're interested in that, fill it out. You complete the steps after the event. You need to go through all that right now, but just fill out the form. I'm going to wait a minute here for anybody who wants to do that and to get a sip of water because I talk a lot. And Mitchell, I am going to get that question. That's a good question. All right. Since our graduates love us, if I ever am feeling down, I just read some reviews from our graduates. then I don't feel down anymore. Referrals have always been one of our top enrollment sources over the years. And so years ago, we instituted a 5% commission payment for any enrollment we pay to the person that referred them, right? That's not just for our students and graduates, though. You can take advantage of this. In a moment, we're going to show you a free gift, and you can email in to get that free gift. If you've got someone you think we should be talking to that you want to refer to us, put their contact information in there. We keep track of that. And if they end up enrolling, we're going to cut you a check for 5% of the tuition that they pay. And you'll deserve it. It'll be money well earned because you'll have changed their life. All right. One of the last things here, I just want to talk about the books we published, right? We have 7 publications, including 3 Learn Coding Basics in Hours books. We have a coding book for kids and young adults. We have a Technology Basics Dictionary. We have a Project Management Handbook, covers how do you make software. And we have You Are Not Stupid, which rocks. This book, You Are Not Stupid, was essentially a written version of our most popular course in all of our boot camps. It's called the Computer Basics course. It removes all mystery and confusion from every element of computers and technology. And in the book, we explain all modern technology terms and concepts, and we even have a history of technology that shows how we arrived where we are today. It makes it so much easier to handle the rapid change of technology in all of our lives when you understand all of this data. So that's You Are Not Stupid. So here's our free gift. What we want to give you, if you'd like to have this sent to your house, is an actual physical copy of the Project Management Handbook. Here's all you have to do. And by the way, this is for US only. I apologize. Okay. There's a nice Kindle version on it for super cheap if you're outside of the US and you want to grab it on Amazon. But we'll send you a physical copy inside the US. Just look in chat right now and you'll see that books@learncodinganywhere.com email. Grab that and shoot us an email. If you give us your name and your mailing address, we will send you an actual physical book. And it's a good book. You'll like it. Also, if you want to include any questions I haven't gotten to, or if you want to refer anybody to the school that we should be talking to, just drop that in the email as well. I'm going to pause for a moment. Absolutely one. Yeah, this is a book that I really wish I'd had when I was seeing all these changes in how computer software projects were made in the early 2010s, because there was a big shift in how software was made and it wasn't explained very easily. And so I had to kind of call all this together and simplify it. And it's a good book to have. All right. Now, usually we have a question like, are these videos recorded, right? Will it be a replay? The answer is yes. And here's how you get to that. We have all of the links for the Tech Academy in one place. We use this service called Linktree. So if you grab that link, Regina dropped it in chat, you'll get links there for everything. Our free educational YouTube video playlist, you can connect to there. We have links to all of our books, our dictionary, upcoming meetups. If you want to attend more classes like this, all the links are in there. All of our social media accounts are on there, right? And the recording of tonight's class will go up on that YouTube channel. So you'll be able to watch it again if you want to. So please follow us on social media. It really helps us a lot when you do that. And you're the first to know when we're doing new stuff. Also, invite your friends to future meetups. If you enjoyed this class, you got anything out of it, let your friends know about it. And finally, if you'd like your own free copy of You Are Not Stupid, you might be able to get one. Okay. What we do is every week, we give away a free copy of You Are Not Stupid for people to do the following. If you will post on your social media the link to our next event, hint, hint, it's Friday, right? This coming Friday, we have a free coding class. If you'll post that link and tag the school, tag the Tech Academy in your post, we're going to enter you in a raffle to win a copy of You Are Not Stupid. And we love giving these out. It's a big, hefty book. It's super valuable. It's a great read. It'll help you and especially your friends and loved ones who don't understand tech. Make them read this book, and then you will no longer be the tech support person in your family. So that's it. Thank you so much for attending. Super appreciate it. I'm gonna answer Mitchell's question here in a moment. If you want to stick around for that, that's great. Otherwise, if you filled out that form earlier, the link you see on the screen, if you filled out that form, be sure to jump back in there and do all the steps afterwards to learn about our coding boot camps. I'd love to see you at our next event Friday. And I'm going to grab Mitchell's question here. He says, I'm a computer-aided drafting or CAD teacher. What an amazing technology CAD is. So I'm a computer-aided drafting teacher. I'd like to know, are the pictures of mountains or oceans seen in the backdrop of games, are they made by someone taking a picture with a camera and then you put it in a program and you change it? Or do you create the mountains from scratch using a CAD program? The answer is a little bit of both. And here's how that works. A lot of environment that gets created in the background of games is created using purpose-built utilities in the game engine for creating those. Now, you could look at some pretty complex math inside the game engine that you'd never be exposed to. You really wouldn't have to mess around with very much at all. There's some pretty complex math involving, and I apologize, I got to use this word, fractals. Fractals are repeating patterns found in nature, right? And there's math behind these repeating patterns found in nature that you can use to just with a click of a button and a few little guidelines automatically generate extremely realistic background scenery, whether it is things like geological things like rocks and mountains, or whether it's flora like trees and grass and other growing things. They can all be, you give them a few tiny little parameters and the program just generates all of it for you. So it isn't like, you can call it computer-aided drafting, but computer-aided drafting is such a specialized activity involving the composition of precise engineering, diagrams for a lot of purposes. And this is, honestly, it seems a bit more organic because a mountain is a pretty organic thing. So the answer is specialized utilities inside the game engines where you give it a couple of different parameters about like, is it a big mountain range? Is it small rolling hills? Any sort of like rough color scheme? Is it going to be snow capped or not? And click a button and boom, it'll just generate it for you. And you just lock it in and say, that's a permanent asset in the game. And now as you approach the mountain, its dimension changes. And as you walk away from the mountain, its dimension changes. So does that answer that question for you, Mitchell? Awesome. It's a good question. You were right on track with thinking about like using a CAD program. It's just that it's another utility specialized for that kind of, task. And you'll see this all the time in technology. It's like this. Would you want to be the one to figure out the math behind generating realistic looking mountains from scratch? I can't imagine what my first crack at that would be. I would rather stand on the shoulder of giants, people who are tremendous math nerds, that one or two bright people figured this out 10 years ago and then put it into the game engine and I could take advantage of it. All right, good. Any other quick questions before I drop off? All right, thanks so much for attending, folks. Appreciate it. Love all the questions, right? See you at the next class and have a great evening.